short video is going to explain to you the connection between persuasive goals, claims, and organizational patterns. And you'll see that I've selected a couple pages from Travis and Young's textbook, Oral Communication, Skills, Choices, and Consequences, to help you understand those three elements. I like this textbook because it has these beautiful graphics that make it pretty easy to understand the relationship between persuasive goals, claims, and organizational formats. So if you'll take a look at the graphic on the left, you're going to see that there are three goals that you could have as a speaker when you're persuading. You can convince the audience, reinforce the audience, or actuate the audience. Remember that to convince means you're just focusing on getting the audience to willingly accept or agree with your belief, attitude, or feeling about something. A speech to reinforce, remember, is the audience is already doing something, believing something, or acting in a particular way, and you want to say, hey, keep that up. That is a good thing to keep doing, or I really want you to continue to hold that value or that belief. The speech to actuate is one that willingly asks the audience to change their behavior. So you're trying to influence the audience to do something differently than what they are currently doing. And that can happen either at a very personal level or at a much larger societal level. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. When you are convincing, reinforcing, or actuating, you also, remember, have to have claims. And overall, your general goal is either primarily a claim of fact, a claim of value, or a claim of policy. So what I'll do first is explain what those three are, and then I'll show you what these little arrows mean, connecting the goals to the claims. A claim of fact is one where you are simply trying to prove something true or not true. So if I said the moon is made of green cheese, I have made a claim of fact, just a statement that I now have to support with reasoning and evidence. I can prove that statement either true or not true using the reasoning and evidence that I find. When you're making a claim of fact, you have to get the audience to really understand that reasoning and evidence and have sufficient reasoning and evidence to prove something true or something not true. Again, if you go back to my example, the moon is made of green cheese, I can present evidence that that is in fact not true because we have been to the moon and we brought back rock. And we proved that the moon is made out of rock. Now, I know a lot of people have probably seen some conspiracy videos or explanations that in fact the moon landing was a hoax. But the people who have created those videos are actually using either false scientific information or poor reasoning. They are engaging in what are called logical fallacies. So the evidence that they have may sound like it actually proves that statement true or proves that the moon landing was a hoax, but in fact that is also not true. So when you're making a claim of fact, you really have to have solid reasoning and evidence to back up what you have to say. A claim of value is going to say that one thing is more important than another thing, or that something has more value than something else, or something is important. So you can make claims of value in several different ways. You can simply say that something is important. So for example, I could say, it is important that we protect our environment. When I make that statement, I am trying to convince you that it is true, or I'm sorry, it is important that we protect the environment. I'm not asking you to do anything, I just want you to agree with my value that the environment is important. I could also say that one thing is more important than something else, or one thing is better than something else. So to make a really simple example, I could say chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla. I could also say it's more important for us to save money than spend money. So those are both claims of value where I'm trying to say something is important or more important than something else. A claim of policy is one where you're trying to get people to change their behavior. So if I said we need to all buy electric cars in order to protect the environment. Most people currently do not have an electric car, So I'm asking you to do something that you aren't currently doing. If I said, we need to reduce the speed limit to save lives. Currently, the speed limit has been increased. People drive faster. And I would say, well, I think in order for it to be more safe, I'm going to ask that we change our behavior and lower that speed limit. So claims of policy, I had mentioned again, could be ones that are achieved either by personal means, the audience goes out and does what you're advocating, or the society has to change its behavior, okay? So you're going to see when you can convince the audience about a claim of fact, a claim of value, or a claim of policy. When you reinforce an idea with the audience, it can be a claim of fact, a claim of value, or a claim of policy. But when you ask the audience to change their behavior, you're actuating, and that's the only choice that you have is a claim of policy, because a claim of policy inherently asks the audience to do something different, okay? That's a little bit of background. As you work on your topic proposal, you're going to see that you're going to need to consider these ideas, okay? Remember also that you are really using different types of claims to build arguments to support your message. So when you talk about claims of fact, value, and policy, those are sometimes also more important to talk about in terms of how you're using your reasoning and evidence to build your argument, okay? So when you go over here to types of claims again, you can see that if you're making a claim of fact, there's only one persuasive organizational pattern that you're going to use, and that's a statement of reason structure, okay? So again, if I wanted to claim that the moon is made of green cheese, basically what I'm going to do is present 3 reasons why that is true, or 3 reasons why that is not true. Okay, that's what a statement of reason speech is. If you're making a claim of value, you actually have a choice of either using a statement of reason structure or a comparative advantage structure. So you can either say, I have 3 reasons why this is important. A comparative advantage structure says one idea is more important than another idea. And you do that by making comparisons between 2 things. So I could say chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream because it tastes better. Chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream because it looks more appetizing. Chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream because it has less calories, which clearly isn't true, but for the sake of advantage, you can see how I could make comparisons between the chocolate and vanilla. And then finally, a claim of policy, you have 2 options. If you think the audience should be doing something immediately after they hear your speech. For example, everyone should donate blood in order to help save lives. Everyone should start biking to school in order to save the environment. Everyone should start drinking more water because it's good for your health. All of those are things that immediately after hearing your speech, the audience could actually do. That would be using Monroe's motivated sequence. It's a 5-step plan for creating personalized persuasion. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. The claim of policy, where you want somebody else to do something, requires what's called a problem solution format. To make a determination if somebody else should do something, you just need to think about, could the audience go out and do what I'm asking them to do right now and make a difference? So if you say, we need to improve healthcare in the United States, that is not something I personally can make happen. I can make my own healthcare better, but I can't help, improve healthcare overall. In order for that to happen, the government has to be involved. I could ask the audience to write a letter to their congressperson saying we need to improve healthcare. That's something I can do, but that's not going to solve the healthcare problems that we have in the United States. So again, it would require an act of Congress in order to change laws or a change in the healthcare system in order to somebody else or a large group of people doing something. That would be a problem solution structure. In order to better understand this, you actually can read further here about statement of reason structure, comparative advantage structure, and problem solution structure. There is a 2nd and 3rd page that's connected to this. in your persuasive speech folder where you can see the continuation that also explains the rest of problem solution structure and Monroe's motivated sequence. You need this information as a framework as you work on your topic proposals. Your topic proposals require you to make some choices about these elements. So spend a little bit of time reading these documents. If you are still confused, don't be afraid to ask questions. I think this is the part that students struggle with the most. And I will be checking your topic proposals to make sure that you've made the right choices. If you haven't, I will help direct you in making those choices. Okay? Again, if you have any questions about this, please write them down. And you can either ask me about them personally, you can send them to me in an email, or you can give me a phone call. This is not the type of information that would be appropriate to ask a question via text message. All right, I hope that's helpful and that this will provide you a framework so you can work on your topic.